I'm a junior here in the Jackson School of International Studies. Annika Larson, who's sitting outside, Maddie Schroeder, who actually has the stomach flu, so she's not here, unfortunately. We've been working together since January to put today together as Peace Corps Success and Service interns. The Peace Corps Office of Innovation in DC has been running this internship program through 60-some-odd schools throughout the country. And it's a virtual internship program, so they kind of threw it at us and said, okay, put something together. So the official definition of the program is Success and Service, led Dr. Peace Corps, has compiled a panel of Returned Peace Corp Volunteers to create a TED-style speaker forum where these esteemed guests will share their experiences to the U.S. community and beyond about what they're doing today and how Peace Corps has impacted their journey. Our speakers will hopefully inspire you to consider the role service could play in your lives, both personally and professionally. So, I will introduce you to our first speaker of the evening, Jennifer McDermott. Currently served in in Estonia, from 1992 to 1994 as a PEFL volunteer. Her experience as a Peace Corps volunteer has influenced her teaching career ever since. Jennifer has taught English on the west side of Chicago, Bronx, and Brooklyn. She was an honorary Peace Corps fellow at the Teachers College at Columbia University. She continued her service with other RPCVs, Returned Peace Corps Volunteers, in the Academy of Arts at Taft High School in the Bronx, and then went on to become a literacy consultant for the Center of School Improvement at the University of Chicago. She currently serves as the Chief of Staff for the Center of Educational Leadership here at UW. Once a year, Jennifer and a friend from Estonia meet somewhere in the world to explore, learn, and reminisce about how they became friends while picking potatoes. So here's Jennifer.
Right. Information. I was a teacher in the Peace Corps, and I've been in education ever since for 24 years. But I had to really think about how it influenced my career. And here's what I'd say the Peace Corps really taught me about how to be successful in my career. It taught me about change and how to live through times of change and how to pay attention to people who are going through change and how to partner with them when they're going through change. And finally, this is a little more subtle, but it helped me understand how to tell the story of my service and how to tell the story of the people that I've served. Because the way you talk about your service can change people's lives about people and about things. So I want to start by saying I arrived in Estonia as one story was ending, the fall of the former Soviet Union, and another was beginning. Estonia's freedom as a democratic parliamentary republic. I had to memorize that like 10 times. Like, what was it? A parliamentary republic? And I just want to thank Casey back there. She helped me with these visuals. I could not have done this by myself. So I was a child of the Cold War, and so I was beside myself. I'm going to Estonia, this place in the former Soviet Union. And so when I got my acceptance letter, my college roommates and I ran to a globe and said, where is it? Of course it wasn't there. It was just this huge, massive land called the USSR. Peace Corps had never been there. I was going to be in Group 1. We were going to see things first. Change was a great thing. This was going to be awesome. On June 20th, a few days after we arrived, the currency changed from the Russian ruble to the Estonian ruble. And every Estonian could exchange 10 rubles for 1 crown at a maximum of 1,500 rubles for 150 crowns. Why does that matter? Because whatever life savings they had was gone. All they were going to get were this fixed number of crowns. And so as a way to prepare, I heard Jason say this too, this was fun to prepare for. So I reread my journal. That's a journal. Okay, and I read that. And here's what I recommend. If you keep a journal, don't reread it. Ever. Because you're not who you think you are. You know, it's awkward. But in my journal, as I was looking for entries about the currency change in my time in the Peace Corps, I was looking, and all I wrote about, honestly, were boys. Every single entry was about a boy, and I thought, well, you've got to be kidding me. I had to have noticed something while I was there in the Peace Corps. But in between these entries about boys, I actually did write a little bit about the currency exchange. And I noted that the Peace Corps gave us $40 US as money to last through the conversion. And it was supposed to last 21 days, and I kept referring to this money in my journal as my walk-around money, like my grandma gave it to me and said that or something. And I had 1,628 rubles. Very exact number, I don't know how I got them. And I was debating, should I exchange them? Should I spend them? I didn't know what to do. Because Estonians were racing to get rid of their rubles, right? They were going from store to store buying vodka because they knew that would be an excellent commodity for bartering once their entire life savings were converted into the fixed number of kronas they were going to get. I'm not going to let you do that. It's not going. So later that summer, I had an opportunity to have dinner with an Estonian colleague. And she said, "We're 40. And I was stunned by this comment. What? I mean, that's what the country looked like when I got there. I thought, that doesn't look so great. What do you mean you're poor now? Well, of course, it had been under the Soviet occupation, so it was damaged. It was dilapidated. And her comment made me realize I was not paying attention at all. It did not occur to me that Estonians suddenly felt poor. Because when I got there, three things were happening. Estonians were resurrecting their cultural heritage, and the Soviet culture was alive and well as it played out in day-to-day activities like making a call, buying a bus ticket, and paying rent, which took all day. And there was this era called the immediate post-Soviet era that lasted 5 years, where there was really no government. And it was marked by a lot of ruthlessness, rising crime. So her comment made me think, well, you better pay more attention. You're just writing wrong points. Get it together. Okay. So that's what it looked like. And that's what it looked like when I went back in 2014. So it's a pretty big difference. Okay, that's me too. That's me at 21. And one of the things that happened in Estonia is it became separated from this huge system that gave Estonia services, goods, and structures. And those goods and services and structures did not go away over time slowly. They were gone suddenly. So food was a little sketchy in the fall of 1992 and 1993. I hope you can see that my clothes look a little baggy on me. You know, I wasn't that thin when I got into the Peace Corps. But I reread my journal again. And in between entries about my self-exploration, I said a few things like, God, I'm hungry. Why am I so hungry all of the time? And in fact, in one entry, I said, oh, it must be because I'm learning so much Estonian, it's taking so much brain power. That's why I'm hungry. I don't know how I could have made that connection, but I was losing weight rapidly, and I sucked on hard candy to fall asleep. I went, uh-oh. Meanwhile, I was really busy learning how to teach. I just graduated from college. I didn't know what I was doing, but I was assigned to teach 9th through 12th grade English. And I don't know what my students thought about my sudden appearance in their school. You know, to them I was their English teacher, an American, most likely the only one they've ever met. And the biggest thing I tried to accomplish was teaching a lesson that lasted more than 10 minutes. Because that's all I could manage. I could not figure out how to plan a lesson that did not last less than 10 minutes. And I wanted to get my students to talk, because all they did was copy English phrases out of their textbook. I was really, really busy trying to be competent in my job. And it took all my time. The other teachers in the school were actual teachers with master's degrees and years of experience. So you can see this was the municipal school in 1982, and now it's a private boarding school for Estonian students in the Western region, 2014. Pretty different. A lot of change in this country in a short time. So, that fall, a colleague said to me, would you like to come to to our summer house and pick potatoes? Would I? How awesome is this? So I said absolutely. So Estonians spend a lot of time at their summer houses. They go every weekend and they pick potatoes and they go into the forest and pick mushrooms. I thought this is a great way to pass the time, an excellent way to practice my Estonian. Turns out it's a great way to get food. So my colleague, her husband, and her niece Silva, who became one of my closest friends, used spades. You know, that was exciting for me. I'm a city girl. It was warm enough to wear a swimsuit up that far north. And we dug potatoes and put them in a basket, drank a beer, took a sauna, said goodbye. Wow, what a great day. How entertaining for me. Several weeks later, her husband came out of the flat, my social flat that did not change, looks exactly the same, with a big burlap bag full of carrots and turnips. And he said, "Thank you so much for helping us pick potatoes. It was so kind of you. These are for you, to help you get through the winter." Wow, that was a huge sort of duh moment for me in the Peace Corps. This whole thing was orchestrated to help me. That day in particular taught me what it means to help people during a time of change. So my second year got better, as they do for most Peace Corps volunteers. I don't know if that's true for all of you, but it gets a lot better. I knew a lot more. The country had access to more. My lessons lasted 40 minutes, which was awesome. And Westerners came. Tons and tons of Westerners came to start a business, to help out. And a pretty robust expat culture emerged. And when we go into the capital city, we'd go to bars and talk about the craziness and absurdity of our lives. And sometimes the stories were funny. And sometimes they were true, and sometimes they were unkind. You know, we'd take our frustration and our loneliness and our sadness out on the struggles of others. And that never felt very good. And sometimes someone would say to us, "Really, is that what you think?" And I realized the way we were talking about our experience really mattered, because we could diminish our experience if we didn't talk about it in a way that was fair. So I took that with me. And that person who said that has been a mentor in my mind the rest of my life. So I got home safely, a lot thinner, gained the weight back really quickly back in the United States. So I decided I like teaching enough to keep doing it. Took a job on the west side of Chicago in a GED program, and then became an honorary Peace Corps fellow at Teachers College, Columbia University. I really consider this experience a continuation, if you will, of Peace Corps. We had to serve in a hard to staff school, and I worked alongside about 10 or so other Peace Corps fellows in that environment. And everything I learned in the Peace Corps helped me in the Bronx. I knew how to teach, and I knew how to get what I needed. And there was a lot of stress in that school and anxiety. And it wasn't just because it was overcrowded and struggle, and sometimes it was dangerous. There was anxiety because there was talk of breaking this big comprehensive high school into small schools. This was before charters were big and small schools were big. Teach for America was only 9 years old. This was a time of great change in our education profession. In fact, 10 years later, the school was broken into 4 small schools. And I remember the anxiety of my colleagues, who we would have called veteran teachers at that time, because I was 26. And I thought, wow, why were they so stressed out? Small, we started this small academy, focused on the arts, and they would glare at us in staff meetings. What do those young whippersnappers think they're up to over there, starting a small school, focused on the arts? And I realized this was going to be a game changer when the school was no longer what it was, a big comprehensive school. And this big change had some big consequences. A lot of teachers didn't make it through, even though they were quite good. The change was just too much for them. There's a lot of benefit to small schools, but there was a lot of loss too. After that, I became a literacy coach, and I decided I could teach everyone to teach reading. So I worked with teachers in their classrooms, in Brooklyn and in Chicago, back in Chicago. I worked at the University of Chicago for a few years. And let me tell you something. Maybe Paulette can appreciate this as a co-teacher. Going into someone's classroom is no different than entering the Peace Corps. There's a world in there. And when you go into someone's classroom, you're entering a world. And you have to look and you have to listen. You have to understand what's going on with teachers and their practice. And I learned to be patient. And my job was to get them to change their practice so we got better students with results. And sometimes the leaders would say, just tell them what to do. But we know that's not how change works. Change doesn't work by telling people to do something, ever. So my relationship with those teachers is what in fact helped us make that change. So partnering was essential. It always made my work easier, lasting, and successful. After that, I decided I don't need to work for anyone, I'm going to work for myself. I became an independent educational consultant. And I started working all over the country in school districts that were going through change due to legislation, standards, a new population in the community that New Hampshire had to serve. And that job was absolutely complex. I worked with every level of the system. Students, teachers, curriculum directors, principals, instructional leaders, everyone, superintendent. I had to pay attention to so much more. And I had to partner with so many more people. And everyone wanted to know what everyone else was thinking. So I had to be careful how I presented that story of change to everyone who was involved in it. I think this was the moment that Peace Corps helped me most. Because I felt like I could handle entering a complex system and help navigate the change. So now, I'm the Chief of Staff at the Center for Educational Leadership at the University of Washington. We're up at Northgate, by the way, so I'll never get down here. This is a thrill. Okay, because we're way up north. And we have a lot of Peace Corps influence in our organization. 3 former volunteers and 2 parents of volunteers. Our executive director, Ms. Nikki's daughter. Our director of marketing. That's one of our associate directors. And one picture didn't get sent, but would have been great if she did send it. There's another project director who had a daughter in Ecuador. So I'm interested in a lot of things in our organization. But one of the things I'm most interested in is how we partner. Because I love to partner. I really learned to do that well. And I think we do it well as an organization. Because people appreciate working with us. And I think we're really good at what we teach. We're really clear about it. We have amazing people who go out to the country and work with school leaders all over the country to help them get better at instructional leadership. But we're not as clear about how we work. And I think we do what I learned in the Peace Corps. Pay attention, partner, and present fairly. So I've been working in a profession that has gone through incredible change in the last 25 years. Some people say education has changed more in the last 20 to 30 years than it has in its whole history. I don't know if this is true, but almost everyone I know feels like it is true. And I'd say the Peace Corps has helped me through that. Not just knowing how to teach, but knowing how to live in a profession that is changing so much.
Is that, to always expect the unexpected. You know that things will go wrong. And let me begin by saying, Relaflus limandush aye, Made mahaliye, Kalima masus, Relaflus limandush aye, Made mahaliye. And in this song, the mother is singing to her daughter. She's telling her daughter, it's like, baby, don't go with that man. You cannot marry that man because he doesn't have any money. And if he doesn't have money, his words are they're sour. And I think of myself as a teacher. And, being a teacher, being a member of a profession where here in the United States, people say, oh, you're a teacher, you're smart, but you don't get paid a lot of money. In Morocco, and I think this is also something that's important with most Peace Corps countries, that being a teacher is seen as being an important profession. that a teacher is a member of the community. So the idea about a teacher as someone whose words are sour, or whose words don't count, that wasn't true. So I arrived in Morocco twice. So I went to Morocco in 1986. I was 21 years old, and I served there for 2 years. I taught in a town on the edge of the Sahara Desert. People thought I was Moroccan, not American. So my experience was different from many of my fellow volunteers because Moroccans would not believe that I did not speak Arabic, the Moroccan Arabic. They did not believe that I didn't speak the local language. And I had to cope somehow, which I did. And in fact, I returned to Morocco 3 years ago. And I was going, and I'm a teacher today. I'm on leave from Seattle schools. Travel has been a major part of my life since Peace Corps. But I got to go on this trip with a bunch of teachers, and again, people were like, "Oh, are you the guide for the group? You know, are you showing people around?" Like, no, I'm an American. Did not compute. Let's start again. You speak Moroccan Arabic? Yes, you're Moroccan. Well, no, I'm not. But you speak Moroccan Arabic, yes? He says, and you speak Berber? Well, maybe a little bit. You're Moroccan. Oh, he says, okay. I'm from the United States. I was born in the United States. Okay, you're an American Moroccan. Okay, cool. All right, so that's just how I took that on. So, and so because of this love of travel, this facility for languages that you get when you're in the Peace Corps. I mean, Peace Corps' view is that once you've learned one language besides your first language, you can learn another. And so that's something that has stood me in good stead. So for me, as a teacher, so I'm a social studies teacher, I'm a language arts teacher, and I'm a world languages teacher. And in fact, until recently, I taught in Garfield here in Seattle for a long time. And then 6 years ago, I transferred to the public high school here on campus. So I'm on leave now, but that has just been a really cool way to think about how I can live a life of service, which is what a teacher is, and that's what Returned Peace Corp Volunteers do. So there's something called the third goal, and we'll get to that in a moment. Something called the third goal, and where the first goal is that we're going to go and we're going to be we're going to present the United States, and we have a goal where we're there to train people. And that third goal is that we're there we come back to bring the world home. We bring the world back home. So that being an international person, so I'm a teacher, I'm an international person, how do I live my life, as a person today? Well, being a Returned Peace Corp volunteer means that I keep my feet planted, not just in the United States, not just in Seattle, but I keep my feet planted, my other foot planted in the other parts of the world. And as a teacher, that has been important because when I'm so here this is a picture of from 2013. This is in Fez. This is a school, and the picture before that was a mural. And so when you're in the classroom and you look the way I do, or you look the way you do, and people are trying to figure out who are you? What do you stand for? Where do you come from? And for many of my students here in Seattle, when they think about, my teacher has lived in so many places, or my teacher lived in this. You lived in Africa? Morocco is that door where it's that door to Europe, it's that door to Africa, it's the door to the Middle East. What does it mean, Ms. Thompson, to have lived in a place where you're coming, where you have to have this familiarity with the unexpected, with the expected, with things that you aren't quite certain how to proceed with your life, but you do and you must. Because, so here, in thinking about just that creativity of being a teacher, that creativity of being a Peace Corps volunteer. Just when I returned to Seattle and I student taught at Cleveland High School, someone said to me, "Oh, we have these books, but they're like 20 years old." I said, "You have books?" And like, oh, it's like, and it's, our library is not, it's really not like the library where you I went to Roosevelt. And they said, your library is, the library we have at Cleveland, it's not like the library that you were used to. And I said, "You have a library?" So this whole way of trying to think about, like, how do I live a life that is about being whole? How do I live a life where I'm constantly putting things together and not seeing the world as broken? I'm, to borrow from Beyonce, I'm gonna make some lemonade instead from those lemons. Okay, those old saying. But yeah. But one thing too about being in Morocco and living in Morocco and being a teacher and and being a part of the community where I lived. I started out with a song for you, and I meant to bring some music for you to hear and to do some some dancing. One of the things that I got to do as living in this town on the edge of the Sahara Desert was that people would invite me, that American girl looks like she's Moroccan, they would invite me to their homes to sing for my supper. I was like, so I'd go over to people's houses, I said, well, I've got to prepare the lessons for tomorrow. Nah, the students can review. They can review. It's like, after dinner, you're gonna sing. And so, and that, in a way, that became my into the community where it's like, I would learn these Moroccan songs. I would learn these traditional songs. I would learn pop songs. And then I would, and people would expect me to perform them. So it's kind of a bizarre type of thing to think of oneself as singing for one's supper. But one thing that I found that was interesting about my time in Morocco, and just thinking about, like today when I'm teaching social studies and I think geography is important. And you're saying to your students, they say, well, how do you explain Seattle to people who live in another part of the world? And say, oh, well, that's easy. How do you explain the United States? Well, that's easy. He says, well, how do you explain living in an Islamic country to people in another part of the world? And it's like, and then you get this look on on students' face. It's like, they says, you lived in an Islamic society. You lived in a Moroccan society. What does that mean? And so often when people ask me, well, what was it like living in Morocco? What was it like? Did this happen to you? Or the favorite question that I get is that, Paulette, you were a woman. Yes, I know that. But you're a woman living in Morocco. What was that like? Were there problems? Well, of course there are problems living in the United States. I was just filling out one of those, I'm a UW grad student too. So there's something that came in the email about, asking about Title IX and one's experiences on campus. We have problems in the United States. Are there problems in Morocco? Absolutely. But did I experience problems living there then? Generally no. I felt very safe living in my community. People knew who I was there, and to give another story, this is during my second year of living in Morocco. There's, these people came, these other volunteers, they parked their car outside of my house. And they said, is our car going to be safe? I said, oh yeah, no problem. And it's like, well, should we lock it? Don't worry about it. People aren't going to mess with the car. So these volunteer leaders were visiting me for a couple days. Nothing happened to the car. Now, on the other hand, they went to a nearby town, and so and I also don't want to tell you that Morocco doesn't have issues in terms of prejudice, in terms of that racism, that exists in Morocco for certain. But I want to tell you that these volunteer leaders who went to the next town, and they parked their car outside of a white male volunteer's house. And this volunteer was not respected by his community. The car got broken into. So I want to use that story just to say that, just to flip the script a bit, because on one hand I wasn't shocked that their car was broken into outside of this person's house, but it just was also, and the car was locked. He told them to lock the door, and outside of my house, that didn't happen. And so just to become a member of that community, because I was a teacher, and I would say, too, this is some other pictures, to look closely at what's happening, Jewish community. No, I wasn't going to mention this in the story, but I will. In Morocco, so I not only did people think that I was Moroccan, but I also had there was also another kind of interesting twist. So Morocco is a pretty diverse place. As I mentioned, this is a Jewish community. Moroccan Muslims were sure I was Muslim, and Moroccan Jews were sure that I was Jewish. And like Muslim, I'm not Muslim. Yes, you are. No, so, well, you're gonna be, right? Okay. So, and some of my students, where they started to take up a collection, say, well, Miss, if we get enough money, you're going to go you're going to become Hajjah. You're going to go on the Hajj. You're going to go to Mecca. I said, well, if you get that money going on, we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. Didn't happen. And then Moroccan Jews are like, you're Jewish. No, I'm not Jewish. Yes, you are. I said, okay, all right, yeah, okay. So are there Jews in your family? Well, on one side of the family, you're Jewish. No, I'm not. Okay, all right. So, all right. Do you believe in God? Yes, I do. You're Jewish. Okay. Okay. Like, would Hitler kill you? Yes, you're Jewish. So, and then when my parents came, and I said, so my mother's not Jewish, and here's my stepfather. Okay. And then I get this comment. I was like, your mother's such a beautiful Jewish woman. What's she doing with the Arab man? So we really had to get together, had to really get to know, the people and the surroundings, and take that closer look. And I just included some of these photos just to get, just to show both the urban, the urban experiences. It's a local fun Mali. That's God, country, and king. So a lot of changes have happened since I've been in Morocco, the South. Sure, a little bit of some beautiful stuff. But yes, and just so you know, that's me. So when I returned to Morocco 3 years ago, I wanted to do some things that I never had a chance to see other parts of the country, and I always wanted to spend the night in the Sahara Desert. It rained, by the way. Yeah, just other beautiful spots. But this thing about Morocco and its diversity, and and being an Islamic country, and people not understanding that in some way Morocco is like a place like any other place. Different language, different culture. You have to get to know it, and you have to get to know the people. And it's what would life be like for us? If we spent more time getting to know one another here. So and as a teacher, as someone who believes in culturally relevant pedagogy, it's like you have to have an understanding of that's good. You have to have an understanding of who your students are. That's something that I learned in Morocco before I had a name for it. It's like learning who your students are so that you can engage in this. You're not the sage on the stage. First one, you're studying to show yourself approved. That's definitely clear. But it's like but you cannot assume that your students don't know anything about their lived experience. And so my students in Morocco, just like my students in Seattle, that how do we engage in getting to know who each other is? How do we engage in learning from one another? Yes, I have a responsibility as an educator to be prepared. I have that responsibility, to know the standards. I have the responsibility. However, if I don't know who my students are, if I don't know where they're coming from, I'm not going to succeed in my goal. And this is something that I learned in Morocco. And the last, thank you.
But just to get started, I wanted to start with where is Niger, and this is the flag of Niger, and we'll see on a map where Niger is. But the flag kind of gives you an idea of the geographical sense of Niger too. The orange here represents the Sahel. So we're jumping over the Sahara where Paulette was and arriving now in Niger. And the Sahel is kind of the transition zone between kind of the verdant green lands of southern West Africa and the Sahara. The white is where the river Niger, which is kind of the lifeblood of Niger, and runs through it. The green is for the more verdant southern part of Niger, and then the orange circle is for independence. And the flag was developed right after Niger became an independent country in the late 50s, early 60s. Niger itself is located here in West Africa. You can see it's bordered on the south by Nigeria, by Chad on the east, and Libya and Algeria in the north. These days, it's a source of a lot of tension because after the fall of the government in Libya, a lot of the arms and armed people came down over the border and it caused a lot of problems in northern Niger. While I was there, though, it was extremely safe, and while I didn't visit, I had a lot of friends who went up into the Sahara Desert in Niger as well. It was pretty amazing. And then where was I? Okay, so I was in a very small village called Senegal Kora, and it was right near the border with Benin. It was very wet there. We had a lot of almost 1 or 2 growing seasons, but we had almost no food insecurity, which we were pretty lucky about. The further north you went in Niger, you ran into more folks who just didn't have access to as much food as they needed to make it through a year. But where I was, we were lucky. When was I there? Well, step back in time here. I was there from 1999 to 2001. You'll remember in 2000, a lot of folks were really concerned the world was going to come to an end. It did not come to an end. We were just reminiscing. I was sitting on a bluff in Niger, listening to the BBC report from, at the time, I think it was Auckland, New Zealand, which was one of the first places to go over into 2000. We're like, oh, well, everything's continued, so it'll be okay. We had a disputed election. I'm sure you might remember these two guys, and had a little bit of an issue there. And then also, this is probably the seminal thing that happened while I was there, was the attacks of on September 11th. And it's worth noting that I learned about them from a Lebanese friend of mine who lived in the same city I lived in, and a Muslim, of course, and who came and told me really just, you need to come immediately, your country's under attack. And I was like, oh, I mean, what are you talking about? That's impossible. And, I went and I watched it within that day. And, it's still, it's a little upsetting to think about it now. But what I did take from that was living in a country that was a majority, 95% Muslim, that there was no relationship at all between Islam and terrorism. And that's something I've been able to live the rest of my life. And I wish more Americans had that experience. And I think that's something you really take from Peace Corps and being immersed in a foreign culture that's different than your own. There's a real understanding of people in other places. And that was one of the biggest lessons that I took. Why was I there? Well, I discovered law school wasn't for me. My junior year in college, I really thought I needed to be a lawyer. I went and worked in Georgia, in Atlanta, this place called the Georgia Justice Project, which was incredible. We worked a lot with criminal defense, with people who couldn't afford a lawyer, and I lived in a homeless shelter. And part of that, what it told me is that I really wanted to work on social justice stuff, but that not as a lawyer. I was pretty convinced it was a lawyer. So why not beekeeping? Which of course is a natural transition, right, from the law to beekeeping. It was my senior year, now we're kind of my senior year of college. I I didn't have a job lined up. I thought the Peace Corps is an incredible experience. I never studied abroad. And they're like, well, we'll send you to Paraguay to be a beekeeper. I was like, fantastic, I'm ready to go. But we all know I didn't get to Paraguay. So what happened was they were like, well, there's a lot of people who want to go to Paraguay, and we'll be ready for you sometime in October, November. I really hated the job that I worked at every summer during college. It's like, I'm not going back to that. What do you have that's sooner? And of course it was Niger in West Africa. And they're like, well, you took Spanish, which is close to French, so you'll be fine. Famous last words. Don't believe anyone who ever tells you that. What was I doing there? So I was an environmental education volunteer, which meant a lot of time working with folks and trying to improve their farming practices, or supposedly I was supposed to help them improve their farming practices, because a lot of respecting the environment there was not cutting down trees, different planting techniques that preserve the soil and were good for the environment. What I quickly ran into, I think it's a question we all have when we try to be experts in something that we're not, was, so how long have you been a farmer? I still remember the time I was asked that. I was like, well, I've never been a farmer. Like, when was the first time you saw millet, which is this crop right here? This is a staple crop, which I ate like 3 times a day for 2 years. I was like, well, I saw it about 3 weeks ago, 3 months ago when I got here. And I was met with just kind of, not with, humor, which I've always heard one of the best descriptions of life in the Peace Corps, and trying to help folks with something you have no understanding of, is it's like, what would the ambassador to Niger from the United States was a woman too. So I could talk a lot about how, well, my boss is a woman, which was kind of mind-blowing, but it was real, and it worked. It was something I knew about, and so we were able to encourage girls to go to school. What else was I doing there? Well, I met some amazing people, and so that's myself looking a lot younger. This woman here is Hawa Baraje, and she was one of my closest collaborators in Niger. She's the first woman to serve in the parliament of Niger, and she and I worked really, really hard on encouraging daughters to go to school, girls to go to school. We would travel from village to village together, and I would say a few things in Zarma, which was the language I spoke, and I don't think anyone ever really understood me. And then she would take over, and she would really put it on the line about why you should send your girls to school. And then when we returned, this is a photo from 2008, she had returned to the Nigerian parliament. So we went to the capital of Niamey, and we saw her there again, where she was still doing work, which is great. And then this is my wife, Laura, who I met. She's a volunteer as well with me at the time. And she now works at the Gates Foundation on maternal, neonatal, and child health. So as I was putting this together, I thought to myself that these are probably 2 of the strongest, most incredible women that I know, and it's really cool that we're all in that photo together. What did I learn? I learned a lot about grit and patience. I think we talk a lot. I mean, now talking about grit is cool. There's all this research about how it's important and that you should have a lot of it. I think Niger taught me that in spades. I mean, it was a tough place for me to be. It was hot, just hot all the time. We didn't have running water. We didn't have electricity. I was learning a language which was totally foreign to me. A culture that was totally foreign to me, and there were innumerable times when you could have just given up and gone home and thrown in the towel. I still remember this dust storm that just blew through. This isn't my house, but it was almost exactly the same as what I lived in. It just totally blew through. Our carpet had been in dust. I was under a mosquito net, which had collapsed on top of me. I'm just clawing myself out of this mosquito net, thinking why am I here? This is nuts. But I stayed, and we just kept going, and all my friends did too, and we made it through that together. And I think that, when I think of difficult times in my life, you go back to that experience, right? And you can draw on that to make it through. And then also patience. There was a word in Niger, it was called, in the language I spoke, Zarma, suru, which means patience. And you just have to be a patient person. Nothing happened really quickly, but things did happen. And I think in life too, that's something I've learned. Nothing really does happen very quickly, but you do, if you're patient and you work hard, you can see things. You can see things through. And those are 2 things that I've taken, throughout my entire life. And then just to close, I think the thing that motivates me the most now, and what I really have taken from my service in the Peace Corps, is that we all have very similar hopes, dreams, and aspirations for ourselves and for our families. And one thing that, I just never countenance anymore is that poor people are anyhow different than any of the rest of us. We're all in this together. We all want almost the exact same things for our children and for our families. We've just been dealt much different hands by the luck of where we were born, or who our parents were, or any number of things. And I just use this picture to illustrate it. This is my family now, Leo, Nani, and Laura, and myself. And then this is my friend Margarise and her son when I went back to visit. And I know that she and I have almost the exact same dreams, I'm sure, for our children and where we want to see the future. And that's what that's really what I've taken now. I work, most recently was working in an international NGO, and I hope to continue working in that field more so in the future. And I remember this every day. It really motivates me and keeps me going. So thank you.
It's a little weird to hear about yourself out loud like that. But let me ask real quick, kind of just get a sense of the audience. What brings you guys here? Are you interested in international development? Raise hands. Interested in Peace Corps? Okay. USAID, State Department? Okay. All right. Well, thanks. Let me start kind of laying out some themes that I want to talk about tonight. And there are three themes that are kind of woven throughout this. And it's service and sustainability and impact. And service is what got me into this whole mess and has kind of kept me into it. But over the course of my involvement in the international development world, these twin issues of sustainability and impact have kind of had a big influence on how my career developed and how my thinking has developed. So, service. My name's John Berry. I'm actually John Anderson Berry IV. John Anderson Berry I was Peace Corps, West Point 01, West Point 33, and West Point 60, and Peace Corps 89. So service was kind of built into the DNA of the family, but I just couldn't deal with the whole discipline thing so well. So I thought, hey, I'll be a Peace Corps volunteer and I'll do my service, and I don't have to wear a uniform and get up in the morning, nasty things like that. So I started out in Niger, and it's kind of, for me, it's kind of Niger, Peace Corps, and everything else after. I used to joke that I got a job as a Peace Corps volunteer and never really figured out what I was going to do with my life, so I just kept doing it for 30 years. And I can say, yesterday, actually, I just cashed the last check I'm going to ever earn from an international development organization, and I am a Seattleite. So it's been quite a journey. It's been 25 countries in Africa, probably 50 countries worldwide, 2 cases of cerebral malaria, case of dengue fever, PTSD, a divorce, and yeah. I think 2 countries I've been chased out of since. When people ask about the impact of Peace Corps, this is my physical. My blankets bag. This is my collection of passports over the last 30 years. That's kind of what I've been doing with my time, and honestly, sometimes I have to look at my passport to remember where I was. So that was really exciting and fun. But I think one of the concepts that I started to grapple with in the village, mentioning the heat, was sitting in my village and wondering, is this really sustainable? As I sat and watched the sweat collect in my navel when it gets 115 in the shade. That is not independence, that is the sun. That is the sun. So 3 hot seasons in Niger was enough to kind of get me thinking, what am I doing here? Am I just, in fact, painting the inside of my shed for the next volunteer? Which, as it turns out, Jason has confirmed that there are still Peace Corps volunteers having parties in the house that I painted for the next Peace Corps volunteer. the model was inherently kind of, you come in, you're the volunteer of the day, then you go, and hopefully you have an impact. But it wasn't really something that I thought was focused on building up local capacity to kind of manage their own problems, to handle African development for Africans. And so these were some of the questions that I had a lot of time in my hut to ponder over for 3 years. And I ended up getting a master's degree in economics, which on the one hand was a good idea, and then on the other hand led me into this kind of weird career of microfinance and a whole bunch of other stuff. But it was kind of, at the time, the answer to the sustainability question, because I felt like microfinance was a way of bringing capacity to African institutions to lend money, to offer savings and financial services to other Africans in a sustainable way. So that was kind of plan A. I thought, all right, I'm a newly minted master's degree student. I'm going to go back to Africa and kind of test my mettle. And I got a job offer in Rwanda. And I thought, no hot season. This could be awesome. That was November of 1993. So it turned out it wasn't as awesome as I had originally thought. But it did bring home a point, which is that, really the assumptions that we have about waking up in the morning and things are going to be this way, it's all really kind of a facade. And it can change dramatically at any minute. And so I guess it was kind of a value life as it comes to you kind of moment. And it ended up being, I don't want to say with a bloom where you were planted, but anyway, I got evacuated out of Rwanda in '94 and then went back in '95 and did some human rights work. And that was the book on genocide and collective memory. But after a while, I realized this kind of issue of the sustainability of the whole experience started to come up in a personal way, in a bad way. Human rights work was chewing me up. I was spending days with people who were up to their shoulders in mass graves, and it was hard. When my lending portfolio was going bad, I lost money. When your human rights program goes bad, it's different. And so I thought, this is good enough. Let me get back into the microfinance business. And then I got another job in Swaziland. And it was a much better experience. It's a small mountainous country in southern Africa. But then my personal life took a dive, and I ended up getting divorced out of that. Which brought up again the sustainability question, which is really what kind of lifestyle are you getting yourself into, John? You've got a nice collection of passports, but where are you going with that? So that, of course, led me to work for the government, which was, I thought, going to be sustainable. And I had a chance to travel around. For a number of years, I was working in Central Asia. Did a chance to look through this. Which button do I push here? That one. Oh, you've seen that. Oh, that's my village. Cool. You can actually, with the satellite, I can see my house. That's the done. That's picture stories. I'll tell that later. So anyway, done a number of years at USAID, traveling around. Got remarried, and my wife got a job in San Francisco. And so, believing in financial empowerment and the fact that she's a doctor who makes a lot more money than I do, I thought, hey, women's financial empowerment will move to San Francisco. I'm going to try and make it there. And the conversation was just different. It wasn't the microfinance that I knew. People were talking about impact investment. I thought, all right, well, this is an interesting enough topic, but where's the there? It just was it was a frustrating experience because the reality that I felt on the ground of actually doing this, of seeing this work, didn't really correspond with a lot of the lofty ideas of mobilizing collective imaginations. So anyway, long story short, I've ended up back in Seattle. I'm back into loan management. I'm back into managing my portfolio at risk and getting paid back, which is an interesting challenge of that kind of right side, left side brain. On the one hand, we're lending to folks who otherwise wouldn't have access to credit, and on the other hand, they got to pay you back, which is kind of this kind of sustainability issue. If I don't get paid back, it's not sustainable. But if I'm not looking to make a difference, then I'm not doing my job. I'm not achieving my mission. I'm not having impact. So I guess that part of this concept of impact for me has changed from working in microfinance to working in post-genocide Rwanda to yesterday I went to my 6-year-old's baseball game. And to me, at this point in my life, having an impact of just being able to be home with my family and enjoy that is kind of how the circle has kind of come to an end for me. And I'm still engaged professionally in trying to make a difference, but I'm trying to balance off more of the personal side. Don't have quite as many visas in my passport anymore, but I think I'm, working generally on being a happier person. So I had a couple of thoughts for folks here about Peace Corps, just in terms of advantages and disadvantages, if you're thinking about the experience. And I can say, you've got a select audience, or actually a select group of speakers here. We're all here because Peace Corps made a difference. If we hated our Peace Corps experiences universally, we wouldn't be standing up here talking to you. But I think at the same time, nobody goes through Peace Corps without hating moments of it intensely. So, a couple of the advantages of Peace Corps. They do provide housing, which if you want an overseas volunteer experience, these are the kind of things that are key assets. Housing, language training, technical training, and stipend, which I was making, I think, $300 a month, and I was probably the second best paid person in town. You can see town, right? But the disadvantages of Peace Corps, and I'm speaking from my own personal experience, I felt very lucky I had a job. When I started out, they said you could be a mud stoves volunteer, which is a classic Peace Corps way of just bringing people in and saying, go figure it out, right? You take 3 rocks, you put a bunch of mud around it, you put a pot in it, and that's your job. And that's what they started me out doing. And then they said, well, I actually speak French. We've got this new project starting up, and it's going to be agriculture, and you'll have a budget, and you'll have a truck. And that was enough for me to give up my mud stoves and to get a meaningful job. And I think because I had a meaningful job, that was a huge inspiration for me in continuing to stay in the development business. Peace Corps is the toughest job you have to figure out on your own. But there's also no guarantee of privacy. You have no privacy in your village because everybody knows that you're the foreigner and is watching you. You have little privacy from the Peace Corps because they know when you're in your village and they know when you're at the American Club and so there's some constraints that are put on you. You stand out in whatever community you live in, and so what you do is visible. I think by and large, I felt we got a pass. We got the NSR, which is what they call foreigners, or the NSR are crazy anyway, so that's all right. But to reiterate some of these, I think the points were made earlier about Islam and this current trend of Islamophobia, it just breaks my heart. It's frankly, it sickens my stomach. I lived for 3 years in a village. I was the only American, the only English speaker, the only white person, and the only Christian in a village, and I never felt unsafe a moment that I was there. The lock on my door was about that big, and often I just didn't even lock. They kind of gave me this, the crazy NSR pass, but I was their crazy NSR, and they looked after me. And I will forever appreciate that, so that was a takeaway point. I think the other issues for me were health. I got sick. I got really sick a couple of times. Ended up getting evacuated to France. I woke up at a hospital bed in Paris, and there was this lovely French nurse who said, "Would you like one croissant or two?" And I was wondering whether I was actually alive already. But I was in fact alive. And the doctor came in and he had this worried look on his face. And he's like, "Oh, yeah, that was a close one, young man." So, you're living poor. I mean, that's the other thing. You have more wealth than most anybody in your village or in your context, at least in my situation. But you're living poor. You get poor people's diseases, malaria, stuff of your body that it's not supposed to.